Mr. Pond Boss, tell me what to do to make all my Lunker Lake dreams come true.
Hello everybody, Bob Lusk going live on this Wednesday, February the 8th. So let's get this party started. Didn't know if I was going to be able to go live tonight or not. Had a little scratchy throat. We'll see how long it lasts and how much memory we've got on this computer to let it go. So here we go. Welcome. Hey, you guys know the drill. Hashtag Pond Boss Magazine in the comments section. Click like, share this video to your timeline. You're eligible for a drawing for a Pond Boss hat and whatever else swag that Leanne's got stashed at the home office. I see Casey Park from Tampa, so we must be getting out there somewhere. Well, hey, I want to let you know, right at 6:30, we launched our very first official podcast. Now, I guess all these lives are considered podcasts, but Mike Garcia Chico, my good friend and producer and videographer, got together a couple of weeks ago, and we spent several days, and we recorded like 12 or 13 of those things. They're a lot shorter format than this. You know, I think the longest one is 22 minutes, but they range anywhere from 12 to 22 minutes. And launched the first one today at 6:30 on YouTube. There's a link, so when we finish the show, you guys go check that out and throw some feedback out there because I really do want to hear about it. I see Jason Rayfield from North Carolina, Mike Cottrell from Palo Pinto County. Hey, you got some rain today, dude. You ought to be in pretty good shape. Rained a whole lot, actually. I don't know how much you got, but you got some. Hello there, John Funk, John Henry, Harrison Davis. Legend is alive. Yeah, but his throat's a little raspy. You know, one of the things I love about my life is I get to hang out with the grandkids. One of the things that I don't love as much about that is they're living little petri dishes, and they carry stuff with them and bring it to you. So as much as I love those kids, I love hanging out with them, they do spread things like sinus infections and all that kind of stuff. So hey, I want to tell you about a little bit about the podcast. We've got, I think, 12 different topics. The first one up to bat tonight is going to be just the basics of pond management. I think the one that's staged after that will be the myths of largemouth bass. I've got like 6 or 8 myths that I pop into and talk about. And I think they're going to be kind of fun. They're professionally produced. I think you're going to like them. But I'm also listen, my skin's about that thick, so I take constructive criticism really, really well. Will the podcast be available on Apple Podcasts? I think so, because what I'll do is I will link those podcasts to like Spotify and all the others that will let me. So if I don't have to pay for it, I'm in. But I'll find out. We're checking out what it takes to be able to list them in some of the different podcast forums or formats. I mean, John Henry, will pond dye cause problems with my fish? No. Pond dye will not cause problems with your fish at all. Pond dye, it's inert, and so when you put it in the water, all it does is color the water. Now, the point of pond dye, and this time of year is a good time to do it if you like that sort of thing. It basically blocks off the UV rays of the sun from penetrating down to a certain depth and try to prevent aquatic plant growth. That's what its job is. You know, because some people like the color. You know, there's a variety of colors. There's, blue is the most common, but there's greens and yellow, black, different colors. Looky there, Deborah Corlew from Northwest Illinois, sipping on homemade soup, boiling maple sap, gonna boil it into maple syrup. Sounds pretty good. I saw a post on Facebook today that Matt Rail's doing the same thing, and he's in central Indiana. When Leanne posted today that I was going to go live, Eric Mayo, Eric's going to be, it's his wife's birthday tonight, so he's going to miss it, but he's going to post his question here. How hard is it to correct a pond that has too many bluegills? Not hard at all. I know it's a rare scenario, but it could happen. Is it as easy as adding more bass, or is it more nuanced than that? Well, part of that answer is going to be based on how old the pond is and how big it is. And I guess my throat is going to be a little scratchy, so we'll see how long we can go. And work through this. A pond that's overcrowded with bass almost always means overcrowded with bluegill almost always means it doesn't have enough bass in it. So when you've got too many of one species of fish, you can manage the predator-prey relationship some. So in this case, if it's bluegills, and a lot of them are, say, 3 to 5 inches long, then stock some 14, 15-inch bass. You don't have to stock a lot, 10 or 12 per acre at that size, up to 20 per acre if there are no bass in there, and they'll start to graze on those bluegill and get them under control. Now, in northern waters, like where John Funk is, bluegills can get out of control and overcrowded because they spawn late and they grow really, really fast, and it's still typically because there's not enough big bass in there to eat them. So, Charlie Kaplinger, is there any place to buy crawdads for a pond to use as bass food? Sure. Now, what I'm going to tell you is buy the local species. Don't get in trouble by trying to bring crawfish from Louisiana to Indiana. You'll be breaking laws. And not only are you going to be breaking laws, you're going to be breaking the laws of nature. Because when you do that, you're going to displace native species of crawfish. Get them locally. There's enough fish farms, like in Missouri, you can't bring Louisiana crawfish to Missouri, but you can buy Missouri crawfish in season. When I say in season, it's whenever they're available. But yeah, you can do that. I'll be checking around some of your local sources. Let's see here. Jim Allen. I haven't seen James or Jim on here yet. I got a feeling he will be, though. He was wondering if there's any news about the fish aging study from the school. Yeah, let me tell you what happened with that. The guys with the 600-plus acre lake over in Arkansas, right next to the Mississippi River, they decided they don't want to go through that effort right now. And I don't know what's happened because they were really gung-ho way back in late spring when I was over there. And to kind of give everybody an idea, it's a crappie lake. It's a big, shallow oxbow lake that has been dammed and elevated in level some. And it's a really good crappie lake. I don't come across a lot of good crappie lakes, but that one is a good crappie lake. And we were going to see if they wanted to get serious about managing the crappie because crappie are cyclical. They ebb and flow. Sometimes they reproduce in the spring, sometimes they don't. It kind of hinges on weather, that sort of thing. So we were going to study some fish ages of fish that they harvest and then come up with some recommendations on how many they should harvest and what lengths and all that kind of stuff. But their little fire has had water poured on it, so to speak. All right, so then I got a question from, I'm going to get this name right, Leah Lachele from Louisiana, looks like. We have a leak again. It's been resealed once with clay. This is a slow leak now. We've been advised to use Damn It Pond Sealer. I don't know what that is. The pond is a little under an acre and has not been stocked. We were hoping to have fathead minnows on the 15th, but it may not happen now. It's half full with a depth of 12 feet. Any advice? And she sent a picture. It looks like there's spawning beds and things in it. If it's been sealed with clay and it's still seeping, my nature is going to be to tell you to let it go dry or pump it out and do it again. And for a pond that's less than an acre, and since there's clay there, to me that's a process error. Process meaning that they didn't use enough clay or properly compact it or both. So I think that's the answer to that would be to pump it empty. Bring in a sheep's foot roller, bring in more clay, pack it in tight, go up above where the water line is going to be, add clay there. And the thing is, it's got to be compacted. If it's not compacted, it's not going to work as well. So let's see if there's any other questions. Looks like we've got, how many people we got? We got 20 viewers, 19 viewers. Okay. Oh, let me see here. There's Ian Swain. I didn't see him a while ago. Let me see here. Scroll down looking at questions. All right. See, Stephen Martin, will a pond seal itself over time? Not really. And here's why. Water seeks the path of least resistance. And if the water's moving through an area to be able to seep out, it's going to continue to do that. And the head pressure of more water on top of it is going to push down, add weight, and increase that site or that area where the lake is leaking, where the pond is leaking. So I have seen one or two ponds where the seepage was slow enough that some siltation over time stopped it. But for the most part, here's what I'm going to tell you. Seepage doesn't heal. It just doesn't. It just, because water's going to make it bigger. Water's going to be moving and cause it to go. See what other questions we got here. So what are some of the topics we're talking about on the podcast? The podcast, we set up 2 cameras, shot it right here, and Chico was sitting in a chair across the table from me, and he and I just carried on conversations. We've got conversations on building ponds and lakes. We've got, harvesting. We got a bunch of different topics. Now, the way I plan on doing that, plus I've got a bunch of other recordings that I've never used. So now that I'm kind of getting it under my belt on how to do this, I'm going to be adding these things. Now, the podcast that Chico and I shot are going to be uploaded one a week on Wednesdays, except typically not on the night that I go live. I'm going to go one time a month live, and we'll present that to you, let you know what's going on, etc. on the scheduling. We'll put that up on the Facebook page, and then we will link. I'll get Leanne to link each podcast on the Pond Boss website at pondboss.com and on the Pond Boss Facebook page, and we'll let you guys know when they're going to go live. Christopher Aguilar, is this the Pond Boss? Yes, it's been a few weeks. Yep. All right, Michael Eric, would golden shiners be beneficial to stock to help feed smallmouth bass and walleye? These were stocked this past November. As of now, they have fathead minnows and baby bluegills to feed on. I'm going to tell you, if you do some shiners, do it about the time those shiners would spawn. And I don't have any problem adding shiners to feed smallmouth and walleye. They will eradicate the fatheads. The bluegills are gonna. Some of those will be eaten, but most of those are going to grow up and be big enough they can escape the predation and then start having babies themselves. So adding some golden shiners could be beneficial. I want to know more about that pond. But I'm going to tell you, since it's about smallmouth and walleye, I'd say, yeah, that would be beneficial. So Doug Brown, happy water question. My pond is supported by the swamp with millions of cypress trees, so the watercolor is like tea sometimes, black looking. pH 6.8. PPT, I'm not sure what that is. Uh-oh. I don't know what PPT is. ppm, parts per million, parts per thousand. You know what? I do want to answer that question. I'm not quite sure I know what it is. Okay, water is black tea. Yeah, black water. Yep, got it. pH 6.8 is perfect. Tell me what PPT and ppm is. I don't know what that is. That's not acronyms I recognize. Tell me what that is, and I'll answer that. All right, Jason Rayfield. I'm getting a buildup of algae in my pond here in North Carolina. I think maybe Spirogyra. Isn't that a famous rock band? Same thing happened late winter last year and made it hard to fish. Any recommended control measures? Yeah, on Spirogyra in North Carolina, especially if you've got black water as well, Jason, I'd be tempted to use, what do they call it? Green Clean. Took me a minute to think of that. Green Clean is a hydrogen peroxide based algae killer. What it does is it contacts the algae, makes the cells erupt, and then they die. So that's a good one. Another good one is to use a chelated copper compound, but you got to be careful about how you use copper-based products in water with low pH. Now, the chelated copper products are probably just fine. So check that out. And when I say chelated copper, I'm talking about KT, Cutrine Plus, products like that are really good for algae. Now, this time of year, you're going to see algae, especially when the water temperature fluctuates as much as it has been, and depending on where you are. And so, just be sure that the algae. Now, if you watch this video like in May, well, by that time, bushy pondweed's growing, American pondweed, different kinds of aquatic plants are beginning to grow. And as that happens, algae can cling to it. So if you kill the algae, you're only going to make what's behind it doesn't die from an algicide grow more. Ian, pond water question, why would it get dark and couldn't see the bottom when it's clear 12 feet to the bottom off the dock? Why would it get dark and couldn't see the bottom when it's clear to 12 feet, the bottom of the dock? Boy, I don't know how to answer that one. Let me think about it. Why would it get dark and couldn't see the bottom when it's clear to 12 feet? If it's clear to 12 feet at the bottom off the dock, you ought to be able to see 12 feet everywhere. Now, there are a few exceptions to that. Depends on the size of the lake, first of all, and if there's much circulation going on. And when you got wind and wave action and it stirs the water up, and you've got circular currents going on, or horizontal circular currents going on, it can sure stir up some sediments in part of the lake on the downwind side and stir it up where visibility decreases. Dave Weber. Oh, that's a fun question there. I guess my throat is going to be scratchy for a little bit. Dave Weber, any experience with too many walnut trees near a pond? Concerned about the effects of juglone chemical emitted from them? Well, I know this, that the husk that covers walnuts is deadly toxic to living creatures, especially fish, in water. And if you ever look at a walnut tree, there's not many plants growing underneath the walnut tree. You don't see much grass under a walnut tree. And it's because of whatever the chemical is. That's the first time I've seen it named. I'll have to look that up to know more about it. But I do know that even native tribes in different parts of the world have used walnuts crushed and drug around in some kind of a cloth in streams and lakes to kill fish, so they could eat the fish. So it's got similar principles as rotenone. So to answer your question, do I have any experience with too many walnut trees near a pond? No. Most of the ponds I see don't have walnut trees around them. But I see where you're going with the question. Harrison Davis, my computer froze up. I'm going to have to start over. Okay. There. Does that help? I know, smart Alec. Somebody say it. Oh, well, there it is. I heard it. Okay, Deborah says, let me see if I can get this to scroll down so I can see it. When adding beneficial bacteria in the spring, can we also dye the water at the same time? Yeah, you can. Now, beneficial bacteria, its job is to reproduce exponentially on the substrate or in the water, attached to whatever it needs to be able to feed on and break down organic matter. That's its primary job. It doesn't do anything to add oxygen, but what it does do is it expedites the composition or decomposition, composting of organic matter, typically on the pond bottom. In dyeing the water, all that does is block the sun's rays, the UV rays especially. So that's really a good, that there's nothing wrong with that. One other thing now, also, Dr. Boyd, that writes for the magazine quite often, he's probably the world's most renowned water quality expert in the field of aquaculture. He tells us that we don't really need to add beneficial microbes. I'm going to tell you, I've seen it work. I've seen it work a lot. And I've seen it, and even though those microbes may be there, they can be there in quantities that aren't helping break down aquatic plant, decaying aquatic plant matter, stuff like that. So, let me see here. Richard Williams, how would I have gotten a shrimp on my pond? I bet he means in my pond. Uh-oh, let me see here. I'm missing something. Well, most of the time when I see shrimp in ponds, they came in the watershed. And I love them. Richard, I don't remember where you are. But what I'm telling you is I don't know how you would have gotten it, but most of the time they migrate through ditches and creeks to get into different ponds and lakes. And I would encourage it. I love those things. Aguilar says he's got suspended clay issues in regards to water clarity. That's pretty normal. Here's Jeremy Day. We got to talk a little earlier on the phone, didn't we? This throat ain't going to make it an hour. It's already telling me. Here's a name. Is if suspended clay particulates can cause fish breathing issues, can too much for too long cause a fish kill? Here's the difference. Suspended clay particulates that cause a pond to be muddy are microscopic. Those can pass through the gills of a fish in the water without clinging. But I've seen many times where people have gone in, and I've done it, where I get in the water, drag a seine through it, stir the mud up, kick up those bigger particulates. They can cling to the gills of fish and kill fish. So we're looking at two different animals here. We're looking at microscopic clay particles that are lighter than water. Those aren't going to bother a fish's gills. But clay stirred up, like with a track hoe, or by seining fish and dragging a seine across the bottom and kicking those bigger particulates up, that can make a difference. That can wear them out. And I've killed fish doing that. Typically the small ones go first. Larry Hardesty, hello from Hayden, Alabama. Been putting out structure all winter. Fish to be delivered March the 15th. Was going to get like 200 bluegills and like 200 red eye. I'm going to say red ear, I bet. Would you recommend any minnows? Put like them Christmas trees, sunk them. You think that should help the brim? Yeah, that'll help the brim survive. Now, I don't know how big your pond is. So when I start working on stocking recommendations for people, first thing I want to know is how big is the pond and what are your goals? What's the mission? If you want to create a pond to grow big bluegills, for example, or if it's going to be a bass bluegill pond, then we have that conversation. So I don't know enough about what you want to do. My gut reaction is that 200 bluegills and 200 red ear is too low of a number. So if you're going to stock large amount of bass later, unless your pond's maybe half an acre, then that's not enough. But to answer your question, would you recommend? Yeah, fathead minnows. I recommend minnows, fathead minnows, in a brand new pond. I'd say yes. Hey Drew, hey, how you doing, buddy? Hope things are good up there. Hope you're working somewhere. Yep. And I hate walnuts around Juglone bad. Yep, that's it. Jeremy Day, public service announcement. Heavy duty zip ties are great. Yeah, Jeremy's been putting together tires and all kinds of different elements to create structure in the bottom of a lake that his family's having built right now. Down around the Houston area somewhere. Wesley Ellis, have a new blue heron hanging around my 1 acre pond. Should I be worried or will he do minimal damage? I wouldn't be worried about one great blue heron. Those of you guys that have been following me for a long time, you're going to know the story I'm about to tell. This was probably back around 2004. Debbie and I bought this place out in the country, and we put a pond on it and started feeding bluegills. And by that time I was working with Purina Mills to develop better fish foods. And I was in upstate New York once a month for about a week or 10 days every month. And then I just talked to Debbie on the phone, and back then, I don't know, it's probably in July, and the pond had been in for over a year. And we had some pretty good bluegills by that time. We had some bluegills around 6 or 7 inches. And she called me one day and she says, "Honey, where's your shotgun?" And she was asking me where I've got a 410 gauge shotgun that my dad gave me when I was like 12 years old. And I said, "Why do you want my shotgun?" She said, "There's a big, tall, gray bird out there, and it just speared one of your big bluegills by the feeder." I said, "Oh, honey, that's what they do. Don't worry about it." Well, not to mention the fact that it's illegal to shoot one. You can't harass them, all that kind of stuff. She said, "Well, it just speared a big bluegill, and I want to kill it." I said, "Hey, babe, that's what they do to make a living. They're going to eat some bluegills. They're not going to decimate a population. I've never seen that happen. So don't worry about it." Well, a few days later, I got home, sitting out there in the morning with her having coffee, and the feeder went off, and here comes that bird. Boy, it spears about a 7-inch bluegill, drags it up on the bank, and starts pecking on it because it can't swallow it. Typically they'll eat a fish and swallow it. And it's really fun to watch them because they'll spear it, catch it in their beak, flip their heads up, turn it just a certain way, and it goes down head first. So they're kind of fun to watch. So I got up and I started heading to the house. She says, "Where are you going?" I said, "I'm going to go get my shotgun." She says, "You're not going to shoot lurch, are you?" She named the damn bird. So what I did was I switched the feeder to go off after dark. Kind of tricked the lurch out of some free food. But they're not going to hurt you. They're going to eat a few fish. The only ponds I've ever really seen them make a difference on fishery-wise is when there's way too much shallow water and the fish are forced shallow. Very hard to see. Should I start feeding them once I put in the lake? It depends on that rate. Boy, you made me stop there when I read the word otter. Do you think the bream are used to? Yeah, depend, Larry. I'm going to tell you that if you buy bluegill, they're probably used to being fed, depending on how big you buy. If they're little bitty 1 to 2 inch fish, they're probably not used to being fed because they have been fed on the fertility of the water. Typically, depends on that fish hatchery where you're getting them from. And the rates you're stocking. Unless your pond's about 1/10 of an acre, 200 bluegill probably won't come to the feeder until they begin to reproduce and the numbers go up. But if you want to start feeding them, set the timer on your feeder to go off for maybe 1 second, and then once you start to see feeding activity, then adjust it. You want the fish to be able to consume what they're going to eat within about a minute and a half. And if there's any feed still floating on the water, and use floating feed. My recommendation is Purina's Aquamax MVP. It's got 9 different pellet sizes in it. Yep, I'm going to tell you, when you say otters, let me back up here a minute. Also had an otter the other day. Are they bad for my fish? Yeah, they're pretty bad for your fish. It's what they eat. If you see some poop around the edges and there's scales in it, it's otters. I love otters. I think they're cute. But I've seen the consequences in confined ponds where you spend a lot of great effort, dollars, and time, and an otter will eat a 5-pound bass. It will catch it this time of year, drag it up on the shore or on the dock, chew the guts out of it, and leave the rest of it there for you to see. So, I'm not a fan of otters around our ponds and lakes. Adam Harkness, hatchery pond question. Where and what type of mesh do you recommend on buying to stay in a pond that is budget friendly and still quality? Looking at Memphis Net. Memphis Net's a good place to look. So it depends on the mission. So I own one seine right now. I used to have 5 or 6. But I own one seine that I bought in 1984 from Memphis Net and Twine. It is 100 feet long, 10 feet deep, 3/8 inch ace mesh. And I bought it specifically so I could capture bluegills 1.5 inches and bigger, or catfish. And a 3/8 inch mesh, you can pull that through the water. Now most fish hatcheries that are trying to catch a lot of fish use 1/4 inch mesh. I think it's too restrictive for my goals. Now, you got to decide how you want to handle that. But tell Memphis Net and Twine when you call them and talk to them, tell them what you're going to do with it. It needs to be about 20% longer than the widest part of the pond you're going to seine, unless you're going to use it, just to seine a corner or something. So the mesh that I use to this day when I seine, which I'm not going to do it much anymore because I'm almost 68. And I don't want to, but it's 3/8. That's the one I use. You can capture 1.5 inch bluegill in there pretty easy and bigger. It's 7:01. Let's do a little commercial. I do really want you guys to go to the click on the link that's underneath this post, and that's going to take you straight to our YouTube channel, and you'll see all these videos like this archived going back 5 years. But first up to bat, you'll see the podcast that was loaded today. I would like for you to see that, and then either come back here and make a comment, or make a comment there, because I want to hear your feedback. Too long, too short, topic good, other topics. Give me some topic ideas as well. And just give me some feedback. And then share that with people. I think part of my calling and a little bit of a legacy is to get the words out. The more that we can get knowledge out to people, the better. So I'm going to encourage you to share it. Let's see here. New 1/3 acre pond just filled, has aerator now, Curtis Owens. Will fertilize and feed, placing an order now to stock. What is your opinion on stocking forage fish first and bass later? I'm impatient. I would like to do it all at once, but I've read mixed thoughts. If you stock the bass now, your forage fish won't get a chance to establish. What you want to do is, in Larry Hardesty, 1 acre. So here's what I'm going to recommend for people with a 1 acre pond. 1 acre pond's about as big as a football field, and I'm presuming bass are one of the ultimate goals. Then I'm going to tell you to stock a minimum of 1,000 bluegill per acre. Fingerlings, 1 to 2, 2 to 3 inches long. And then give them an opportunity to grow big enough where some of them can begin to reproduce. Stock 5 to 10 pounds of fathead minnows per acre, or even more if you're willing to write the check. You can stock up to 20 pounds per acre, but any more than that really is not that relevant. But the main thing is to get enough in there they can reproduce fast enough so that when you do add your bass, that you're going to build a food chain that will support them for the entirety of the pond. So don't stock both. If you stock the bass in there with the bait fish are not going to have the amount of time they need to really begin to populate, reproduce, and establish themselves. And always remember this, it takes 10 pounds of bait fish for a bass to gain 1 pound. And if you're not growing bait fish, then you ain't going to grow any bass. So you got to give the bluegill and fathead minnows and red ear time to establish, stock the bass, and then once you start to see the bass are catching up with the bait fish, then you start a harvest plan. Hey, Pond Boss Magazine, there it is right there. Comes out every other month. The March issue is just about to go to press. It's in layout now, and it's $35 a year, folks. Cheaper than a Friday night date, and it lasts a year. And there's always a nugget, and there's somewhere that you can use. So if you don't mind, go to pondboss.com. If you haven't subscribed to Pond Boss Magazine yet, please do that. And plus, for us, that's the inexpensive economy that fuels our ability to be able to do stuff like this. I'm going to do this anyway, but if you'll pay $35 for a year's worth of this, you're going to get a year's worth of great information. We've got 7 or 8 different writers, 20 different article type topics in there and something else about this magazine. It's about 60% content, 40% ads. You go thumb through a Field and Stream one of these days, or another magazine that still exists, you're going to see it's going to be more like 50-50 or 55 55 ads and 45 content. So, Purina Mills, I love them. I've had a relationship with them for a long time. Talked to David Nelson a couple of days ago. He's one of the big movers and shakers there. Their Aquamax lineup Sportfish. Aquamax Sportfish. MVP is one of my favorites, but the recipes are all good for what you want to do. And Texas Hunter Feeders. Good gosh, those guys there, great products, but even better customer service. Can't say enough about them. And my son Jonathan has started a company that's really doing well. It's called huntbirddog.com. It's a hunting website where he's building relationships with ranchers and hunters to create opportunities for people, especially for folks that have not hunted much before, and get them out in it, in the hunting world. So go check out huntbirddog.com. Let's see what else we got here. Doug Brown, 1.74 PPT. Okay, I guess that's parts per thousand on the devices stating salinity range. Oh, and TDS is total dissolved solids. Okay. Okay, but it's reading in parts per million. pH 6.8. Well, I'll tell you, for the pH of 6.8 is good. Total dissolved solids, it really kind of depends. But the numbers that you put up there don't spook me at all. So the 1.74 PPT, that's almost no salt. You're not going to taste that. You don't start tasting salt until it's like 2,500 parts per thousand. So that 1.74 parts per thousand in the salinity range, that's nothing. The TDS, I don't remember what the number was, but it's not much. So none of those my happy numbers all fit within a range. And those are all within that range. Peyton Igo, hey buddy, good to see you, man. Oh, Larry Hardesty just threw a curveball at me. The pond has some bass and some brim, just not enough. Okay. Well, it's hard to answer an incomplete question. So if it's got bass in it and the bluegill you put in it are 2 or 3 inches long, congratulations, you gave him a snack. So really, Larry, the mission here with a pond that already has some bass in it, you want to be able to create and sustain the food chain. So in a pond that's got some existing bass in it, you want to keep their numbers under control, weigh and measure some of them, compare them to a standard length weight bass chart. You can find that at pondboss.com. And then when you compare your bass lengths and weights to a standard chart, you can tell if they're skinny, if they're fat, if they're average. I mean, even you can look at them and tell if they're fat or average or underweight, but if you weigh them and measure them, then that's going to give you more information. If you don't have enough bluegill, it's typically because there's too many bass. So even if you go stock more bluegill, and here's the key to this piece, since I'm just now finding out you got bass in there, if you stock some bluegill in there and you don't remove some bass, then you're not going to get anywhere. So I'm going to bet you that you need to be culling 15 or 20 pounds of bass out of that 1 acre pond. Then you'll see a difference with your bluegill. And should you feed them? Yes, you should. I was under the assumption that it was a new pond. Should have known better, but I didn't. And I would not put any minnows in it. That'd be wasting money. Unless you use shiners, maybe that, but no fatheads. Okay, Scott Hamilton, I got a 20-year-old half-acre pond. I've got several 15-pound blue cats, a few bass, crappie, and bluegills. I'd say that's right. I want to stock more bass. What size? If you got 15-pound blue cat, they're eating all your bass that are 2 pounds and smaller. So take that to the bank first. When you say several 15-pound blue cats, in a half-acre pond, really all you need is about 2, and they're going to wipe out as many bass as they can. Here in a half-acre pond that's 20 years old and you got 15-pound blue cats, they're the dominant predator fish. So you can stock some bass in there, but they're probably going to eat most of them. Same with the crappie and the bluegills. So what size bass should you stock? You know, if you're getting them for free because you're catching them out of neighbors' ponds, it don't matter. But if you're paying for them, and I'll be stocking bass bigger than 2 pounds, you're going to pay, if you're buying bass 2 pounds or bigger, you're paying $60 for that. You're paying $30 a pound. So Larry Hardesty, 1 acre pond, how many brim do I recommend? What I would like to see there in your circumstance, I'd like to have a better idea of how many bass you've got. But here's this. Let's do this. If you didn't have any bluegill at all and you were bass crowded, I would tell you to put at least 150 adult bluegills, 5 to 7 inches long or bigger. That's where I'd start. I'd even tell you if you could put a couple of hundred that size in there, because really what you're doing there is you're putting in broodfish so they can begin to reproduce. Second, make sure they've got spawning beds. Bluegill like to spawn in little craters in gravel or sand in an area about as big as the hood of a pickup truck. So I would do that. That's what I would do. Harrison Davis, why do mullets randomly jump out of the water? I think it's so they could see a haircut. I don't know why they randomly jump out of the water. I've never asked them. Any fish I've ever seen jump out of the water in fresh water had something trying to eat it, chase it, corner it, swallow it. But I'm not going to take a swing at that curveball because I don't know why mullets randomly jump out of the water. I really don't. Adam, thanks, buddy. All right, so let's see here. Stephen Martin, I've got about a half acre, and I put 1,000 vat minnows and 42 to 3 inch perch 2 years ago this coming April. Okay, now, but 5 bass in this year, got to be a few hundred perch. Now, I'm going to presume when you say perch, you must be from Texas and you're talking about bluegills. Put 5 bass in there this year. There's got to be a few hundred perch in there now. The schools of minnows are all over the pond. It cost me $100 for the fish. I asked Bob lots of questions about stocking it. I thank you. Also subscribe to the magazine to get information on my nearly 2-year-old pond. So there's a testimony. Thank you very much, Stephen. Adam Harkness, are red ear worth stocking over bluegill? No known parasite problems and cause pumpkin disease occasionally. Very deep lake in Indiana. Steve Banks was wondering if it's worth diversifying for forage fish. There are a few rehearsals here. Rehearsals. I think that's misspelled. Okay, so Adam, when you say are red ear worth stocking over bluegill, I take that 2 ways. One is, are red ear better than bluegill in Indiana? Or can you stock red ear on top of bluegill in Indiana? So let's do this. Red ear sunfish spawn once a year, and in the south on rare occasions they'll spawn twice a year. Where bluegill are typically multiple spawners, even in Indiana. And depending on what part of Indiana you're in, southern Indiana, they're going to spawn 2 or 3 times. Northern Indiana, 1, maybe twice. So that's if they're in good shape. So if you're feeding the fish some, a high quality feed, then the bluegill are going to reproduce more than the red ear. Red ear don't particularly like cold water. Now the saving grace in areas like Indiana is you have ice. That helps keep the water from getting too cold. But I'm going to presume you're saying there are a few red ears already, but not many in the 62-acre lake. Part of the reason there's not many red ears is that's not a good climate. That's why pumpkin seeds do better. Pumpkin seeds actually take the place of red ear. They're a good substitute, and they work much better in northern waters. Okay, yeah, I see red ear. I got you. There's Leanne Holtzbauer. Haven't seen Leanne in a while. Recommend the magazine. Appreciate it. Yep, I think we wrote about Leanne's and her husband's pond in Iowa way back in the day. Let's see, Larry Hardesty, just from the few bass I've caught, they look healthy. Catch some brim, but not very big ones. I've made spawning beds with pea gravel, so putting in small brim won't help. No. You need bigger bluegill. Yes. You need bigger bluegills. Now, the only way small bluegills will work is if you've got enough dense cover for them to escape. Because if they don't grow up to get to be 5 to 7 inches long, they're not serving a very good purpose for you. Stephen Martin, Rose Hill, Kansas. Okay, guys, it's about 7:15. We've been at this 45 minutes. Throw me a couple more questions. I'm going to start wrapping up because my throat isn't working. I'm not sick. I don't feel bad. Just my throat's weird. Which, those of you that watch this show know that happens to me about this time of the year. So, let's wrap up. Tell you what, I'm going to shut it down now. You guys go ahead and click over and start checking out the new one, the new podcast, and let me know about that format. It's 22 minutes long. You got enough time left tonight to pull that off. So please do that. Hey, remember, pondboss.com, pondboss.teachable.com. Oh, Kevin stuck one in there. Let me see. New Fork Pond, probably 60% full. One stocked 800 bluegill, 400 red ear, and 10 pounds of minnows. That number is low. Now, if you stock that many fish, you're understocking it. That pond deserves time to really begin to let those fish reproduce. So in your case, Kevin, if you're going to stick with those numbers, so what I'm going to tell you is give it a year before you add any bass. I'm not sure where you are, but that's not enough bluegill to establish fast enough and build a population for you to be able to stock bass this year. So the goal is to grow as many bait fish as you can, get a jump start on that food chain, and there you go. Adam, you cheated. You went in and watched that video. You dog. That's great. Okay, so hey, I'm going to check out of here. And I do appreciate everybody watching. And I'll post when I go live next, but it'll be about a month. And then we'll put a regular schedule up now that I've figured out how to do all this good stuff here. Okay, Kevin, East Texas. Yeah, you need to wait before you stock bass. All right, everybody. Until next time, adios.